So my name's Nicole Gagner. I teach a whole variety of classes, watercolor, drawing, painting, just a whole variety of things. I mean, I think you can see kind of my crazy studio with a few different projects going on at once. But I brainstormed this idea up with Lisa from the Senior Center of an ornament that people can make with pretty much anything that they have around the house. So if you're an artist and you have lots of supplies, great, you can pull from all of those. If you are not an artist, but you like making art and just have a few things around the house, really, genuinely anything can work. So what we are making today, and these go super quick. So once you kind of get in the flow of them, especially if you have lots of like scrapbook paper or collage papers or just like old, I'm going to use a lot of stuff that are like old drawings that were only half finished and then kind of turn them into ornaments. It's basically a collage paper ornament. So what we're going to do is cut out circles. And then you can see that each of the circles just gets folded in half and then glued together with, I like to use a glue stick if I am doing kind of thinner paper. Glue stick doesn't warp the paper and make it get quite as wavy. But if you are using thick watercolor paper like this, Elmer's glue or any kind of like thicker runnier glue is fine too. A glue stick can work, but sometimes it's not quite strong enough and doesn't quite hold as well for the really thick, tough papers. The nice thing about this though is at the end of the day, it's just paper. Even if you're using like secondhand collage papers, like these would be great from recycled Christmas cards or something. But even if you mess one up and you're like, oh, that glue didn't work, I should try a different one. It's, you know, it's just paper. Just try it again, try a few more things. And you can get really, really experimental too. So I'll really quickly go over how I did some of the collage papers that I'm using. I won't go too into it because I think most people know how to doodle and how to play around. But there's this whole technique of painting paper just for using in collages and things like this. It's called paint paper. So if you're interested in paint paper, you can find some paint paper tutorials on the internet or find other projects with paint paper. Mine is kind of a hybrid of watercolor paper slash doodle drawing paper slash a little bit of everything. So I will switch to my top-down camera and then I will talk about some of the supplies I'm going to be using and then I will just get started. The only things that you really, really need to have on hand for this are like a pencil or a pen to trace your circles with. And then I really like just to keep them super even and to make sure that my circles aren't too wibbly wobbly. You want them to line up a little bit better than this one was freehanded. So I'm going to, instead of freehanded, I'm going to use a template. So any perfectly circular thing like a glass, the edge of a glass, a cookie cutter, something like that. So you can trace around it. You could also do this style where they're just folded in half and glued together with anything that's symmetrical. So if you have like a cookie cutter that's of a Christmas tree and you can fold that Christmas tree in half, this could work for that too. The thing that I found with trying to freehand it, because I liked that Christmas tree idea, but I didn't have a Christmas tree cookie cutter. The freehand things get a little uneven sometimes, and then maybe your right half doesn't line up with if you're gluing it to the left half. So finding stuff that's really symmetrical to use tracing, as long as it can be folded in half and it's going to line up on both halves, it could work for this. So get experimental if you have some of those things, try them out, and then you'll need scissors and glue, and those are the only for sure things that you need, and some kind of paper. If you really want to mix it up with a bunch of different kinds of paper, maybe collect like magazines or like I said, like Christmas cards. Wrapping paper could work great as long as you don't glue too many wrapping paper circles together because they're so soft. So if you use one circle that's wrapping paper, maybe make sure the next one's a little tougher, just so that it stays a little bit more three-dimensional and doesn't smoosh on itself, you know. Technical term, smoosh. All right, so I will switch to the top-down camera here and just kind of go over. So like I said, these are my version of paint paper. So these are just some sketches I've done. I probably wouldn't do anything that's too blank white like this. So I'd want to like fill it in. But it doesn't have to be anything super, super crazy. And it could be something like this where, you know, when I line my circle up on it, I'm not going to get that whole picture, but that could be really fun. You're just getting like this colorful spot. These are just old drawings and examples I have from other classes. But so if you have any kids drawings that, you know, were fun and had them on the fridge for a while, but now you're kind of done with them, this could be great for that. Or just any fun collage papers. I'm definitely cutting out some of these half finished ones. But other things that could be really good is just if you have like old maps or things that, you know, this was out of a book that we used just for collage paper. It's an out of date map, but that could be a really fun circle that could go in there. Some colorful painted papers here are going to be really fun. So these were just drawn on and then filled in really abstractly. So that's really, really fun for stuff like this. And I definitely have some big scrapbooking papers here too, and just a whole variety of different types of papers to choose from. So that'll be really fun to just start kind of going to town, cutting some of these out. Yeah, so the only thing to keep in mind, like I said, is you just kind of want a variety. So if I do my whole ornament just out of this one paper, it won't be quite as interesting if I kind of mix up a whole bunch. And then I don't want to trace on the side that I want the image to show. I want to trace on the other side. So I can just line that up. And it doesn't have to be a certain number of circles, and you can definitely get a few out of pieces of paper, because you could use them either in different ornaments or kind of in different parts of the ornament, just kind of playing around with that. But you probably want to have, I think most of my finished ones had about 6 or 8, seemed to be a pretty good number to make it feel nice and full. And this is not a time that I would recommend cutting corners. So I probably wouldn't stack up a bunch of papers and try to cut through them here, since that tends to kind of make some of the papers slide around, and then you won't have perfectly exactly the right size circles. So I would say don't cut corners here, just really cut it out to the best of your ability. I'm probably going a little bit too wide on this one. I should be following my circle a little bit more exact. I mean, this is why my ornaments didn't line up, but I think that is okay. These are handmade, and that's going to be part of the charm. Let's see. Yeah, I think I do want a pink one in there. Could be kind of nice. And you can, you know, do solid colors, or I could decorate this with like markers or colored pencils or something too. If I hadn't had a backlog of a bunch of already pre-decorated papers like this, I could cut these out and then color on them, you know, with whatever I have around the house. Even if I have just like highlighters or something, that can be really a fun drawing tool, highlighters and pens and things like that. Might surprise yourself with what pretty things you could make with those. All right, so I'm just going to keep cutting out a few more here. I'll just get kind of a variety going. Which side of this do I like better? I guess both of these are pretty cool, so it doesn't matter for this one. I'll probably trace around this one with a marker, though, a pencil probably. So if I'm tracing on a shiny side of something that has like 2 shiny sides, pencil's not going to show up super well. So I'm just going to use a marker there. Oh, hi, puppy. She's trying to make a cameo. She didn't know I had the top-down camera on. Anytime she comes in from a walk, she has to go and run in every room of the house and just take tabs on everything. Where's everybody? What's everybody doing? All right, I've got 4. I'll do a few more colorful ones here. And then I don't think I mentioned how we're going to hang up these ornaments. That was probably the other one must-have thing, is like some kind of string or ribbon or something to hang your ornaments from. I've got just regular twine. I actually really like hanging my ornaments up on twine because then they don't slide off of the Christmas tree very easily. Sometimes ribbons and things like that are just a little too slick. But really any string can work for this. We don't have to be too particular. We're just going to glue it to the inside. So, all right. All right, so let's see how many I've got so far. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think that's a pretty good start. I could always fold these up and decide if I need more too, but just kind of to move on to the next step here. So what I'm going to do next is fold these inward on themselves. And for any really stiff paper like this, just go pretty slow. Don't crease it and then go, oh, I creased it in the wrong spot. Just really, give it some time, line it up. And then once you've got the edges lined up, then put a nice crease in it. If you're having trouble folding really, really tough paper, something like the back of a scissors or a spoon or something like that can really help. There is a tool called a bone folder that's really good for creasing paper like this, but I've never invested in one because I always have scissors and other things around. So fold each one in half. And if they're not perfectly in half, it is not the end of the world. It's still going to be a pretty ornament. You could, even if you had kind of uneven edges or something, you could dip those in glitter and kind of cover up those edges. So not the end of the world. So the side that's out right now, if we're thinking of this as a taco or something, the side that's out should have the pencil markings on it, because we're going to glue those sides with the pencil markings together and they're not going to show anymore. Unless you have really uneven edges like I do. But again, you could cover those in glitter. You could take a scissors and trim them up. Or you could just lean into it and say that's part of the charm. I could also take a marker and kind of run them over the edges to kind of accentuate the edges. So you've got options on how to kind of cover up those edges if they're a little uneven. You can trim them, color on them a little bit more, even paint on them if you have watercolor works really, really well on paper that's like matte and absorbent like this. If it's a thinner paper like this though, watercolor might warp it. Really any kind of really liquidy paint might warp your paper if it's too wet. But once you've glued them together, putting like a little bit of acrylic or something like that on it should work pretty well. So if you want to decorate them a little bit more after you've folded them all, you totally can. So you have options. All right, so now I have all of mine folded so far, and I want to grab my glue, and I'm using kind of a variety of papers here, but because most of it is kind of a stiffer, like a watercolor paper, I'm going to use just a regular white glue. But again, like I said, if you are using lots of thinner papers, if they're all drawing papers, a glue stick works really, really well, and doesn't crinkle those edges up. So you want to grab your glue, and then the other thing that I am looking around my desk and didn't grab is my string. So let me go grab that really quick. I came back with options. So you could use regular twine. You could use kind of a fancy twine like this. You definitely could use ribbon. One thing that's kind of nice about the ribbon is if it's a flatter ribbon like this, it's going to glue inside of there really flat. I just don't think this color of ribbon goes with my ornament. So I'm going to use this kind of funky twine here. And you want to cut it long enough that it can sit pretty much inside of your whole ornament, so you can get a nice big bead of glue there and it'll just stay inside of it. You don't want it too long. You don't want it like hanging miles outside of your ornament, but a little extra space for more room for the glue to grab can be a good thing. So we will do that first. Just remember, we're just gluing this entire edge together. So I'm just going to put glue all along one of these edges and then sandwich my ribbon or my twine in there pretty close to the edge here so that it'll be a little bit more from the center. But if it's not, if you have it a little bit off center, it still will hang in a nice way. So don't stress about it too much, but make sure you have a nice big glob of glue there. So if you need a little bit more to hold that string, that's fine. All right. Got that, and then sandwich that in there. And mine ended up really off, but you can kind of, you know, before your glue dries, just squeeze it around and hold it tight. And one thing that's really nice about this, if you have like clothespins or something, once you get these all kind of sandwiched together, you could clothespin it to hold it for you. So if you're worried about it, you know, kind of moving around on you while you're working, maybe some clothespins or even like binder clips or something could be a handy little extra. You could even clothespin the whole thing if you want. Okay, and I'll just keep gluing these. I'm going to do this one next. You want to make sure you didn't get too much glue on it, that they're not going to open up at the end, but I can clip those closed while I put some more glue on this guy. I should do this one next so it's further away. I had two similar ones there, so I wanted to space them out. Oops, put glue. Don't want to do that one upside down. There we go. Oh, I still did that. Well, that's fine. It's going to be upside down. Keep doing that. All right. So once you have all of those glued together, I would say hold them for a little while until your glue dries, because the next step, we're going to kind of pull them apart to make them accordion like this. So I'll let those dry for a little bit, but I'll bring out my example so you can see what I'm talking about. So with this, it was, you know, obviously I did the same thing. I had a stack and then I put the two edges together and glued them. Oh, this one I must have glued them all together and didn't have the string in the middle. So that's an option too. I made this example last year, so I forgot. You can punch a hole in it and tie your string into if gluing on the inside isn't working out for you. So those are all options. So let's see if this is dry enough that it'll let me pull them apart. I think we can make it work. All right. worked out pretty okay. Like I said, I think if it dried a little bit more, it wouldn't squidge around so much, but yeah, turned out pretty good. I could probably draw on some of my papers a little bit more or add a little bit more paint or something like that, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. Definitely let me know if you have any questions or anything, if anything didn't make sense there, but it's really pretty straightforward. Like I said, I think this would be a really fun process to do with different symmetrical cookie cutters or other different ways of cutting things out that are symmetrical. So I don't see any questions or anything. I'll give it just another minute here. But that's all I had. And I think Lisa from the Senior Center is going to be collecting ornaments for the tree that the governor puts up. So if you want to get with Lisa and talk about putting some ornaments together, I think that could be really, really fun. Hopefully this is a fun way for people to kind of make some homemade ornaments without necessarily, just kind of whatever you have can work pretty well for it. So it can be kind of fun little project. Stay inside, stay warm.